first time that these two, President Obama and Putin, have met in 2 years, what do you think that meeting was like?
Well, I think it was probably very businesslike, by which I mean to say they're both intelligent people. Putin is actually a perfectly smart, intelligent, rational person, but there is no love lost, there is no relationship, there is no warmth. You know, sometimes the psychology of all this is not that important, but it's worth probably pointing out that there is no chemistry here.
You think it's important in this case, the psychology of it?
I don't actually think it's that important, because the real reason why it was probably a cold meeting is that the United States and Russia have fundamentally different geopolitical interests, particularly in Ukraine and the Middle East. And you know, the kind of freeze is a reflection of that reality, not that Obama and Putin, you know, can't get on or that there's some personality problem.
The fact that Russia is, and news that Russia is going to share intelligence with Iran, with Iraq, and with Syria has to be infuriating to the White House. Do you think that was at the top of the agenda?
Well, I wonder if it was, because the truth is that the Russian strategy on Syria is much more coherent than ours. See, what the Russians say is, we don't like ISIS, we don't like al-Nusra, we don't like al-Qaeda, we don't like any of those Islamic terrorist organizations, and so we're going to support the Assad regime to defeat them. That's exactly what the Iranians say. That's exactly what the Iraqi government says. So the three of them, Iraq, Iran, and Russia, say we have the same enemies, ISIS, al-Qaeda. We have the same ally, the Assad regime. So we're going to share intelligence. Our position is we don't like anyone in Syria. We don't like ISIS. We don't like al-Qaeda. We don't like the Assad. So we can fulminate. I mean, but our strategy is sort of incoherent.
Yeah. Speaking, you spoke of the Assad regime since you brought them up. But President Obama had harsh words for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. He's objecting to the idea of keeping Assad in power as a way to keep control in the region. Let's listen.
We're told that such retrenchment is required to beat back disorder, that it's the only way to stamp out terrorism or prevent foreign meddling. In accordance with this logic, we should support tyrants like Bashar al-Assad, who drops barrel bombs to massacre innocent children, because the alternative is surely worse. When a dictator slaughters tens of thousands of his own people, that is not just a matter of one nation's internal affairs. It breeds human suffering on an order of magnitude that affects us all.
President Putin called it an enormous mistake to refuse to cooperate with the Syrian government and its armed forces. Who is right here?
Well, here's how I'd put it. President Obama is clearly right as a matter of morality. The Assad regime is absolutely despicable. The problem here is if you use the kind of rhetoric President Obama is, Assad must go, this man is a butcher, you're not using any means to back that up, right? So you're making these grand, lofty pronouncements about how Assad must go. And this has been the problem with America's Syria strategy from the start. We have these grand goals, very maximalist, and we have these puny means by which, you know, what are we doing? We're training 50 people. We're doing a little bit of, you know, a bombing. We're maybe thinking about small pockets of safe havens at most. That's going to deal with this. You know, you're turning this guy into a Middle Eastern Hitler, and what are you doing about it? So I think that President Obama has to really decide if Assad is as bad as he claims, and if it is in the vital interest of the United States to get rid of him, he needs to do more. If he doesn't want to do that much, I think he needs to dial back the rhetoric and the expectations, because he's putting himself in a situation where he's going to have to do more.
This weekend you spoke to former President Bill Clinton, and he talked to you about this Iran deal. Let's watch this.
I believe the nuclear agreement with Iran is on balance the right thing to do, because I don't believe that an Iranian nuclear capacity now would be just Iran. I think there'd be 1 to 4 other states that would get nuclear power in the Middle East. Then I think you'd have a race on by all these various non-state actors to get fissile material, and it could be a nightmare. I also think that 10 years is a very long time. A lot of people say, well, 10 years from now, they're just going to do what they're doing now. In 1979, if somebody had told you that the Berlin Wall would fall, the Warsaw Pact would collapse, the Soviet Union would come to an end in 10 years, nobody would have believed that. So a lot can happen in 10 years. Furthermore, even with the sanctions on, the Iranians kept supporting their conventional military buildup and the terrorist capacity of Hezbollah. So I think on balance, this is going to be a good thing, but it's very important to be tough in enforcing it.
So Fareed, Iran's President Rouhani at the UN speaking today blamed really the military invasion of Afghanistan, U.S. military-led invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, and our support for Israel for spreading terrorism in the Middle East. I mean, no wonder this is a controversial deal.
Precisely, because Iran and the United States have been at loggerheads. They are opposed to a lot of the things we do. Obviously, President Rouhani is essentially wrong about in his statement, but it shows you they see the Middle East very differently than the United States does. That reality exists. It existed before the nuclear issue. It'll exist after it. It doesn't change the fact that this is probably the best way to prevent Iran from going down a nuclear path for the next 10 to 15 years. Nobody else has come up with a better alternative. It doesn't mean we don't have, interests that are fundamentally opposed, which we'll have to deal with the way we always have to. Better to have to deal with a non-nuclear Iran than a nuclear Iran.
Thank you, Fareed Zakaria. Appreciate it.